Good evening and happy Black History Month. I am Alfreda Coward and I have the pleasure of serving as I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the greatest division in the ABA, the GP Solo division. It is my honor to serve in that capacity, and in so doing, I have the obligation to try to figure out what our vision, our goals were going to be for this bar year. And consistent with my professional and personal commitments, I decided that diversity and public service were my passions, and those would be the targets for this year. So when I was thinking about what we needed to do with diversity, I was trying to pick someone who I thought who could fulfill the vision and our commitment to those things as a division. And there she was, ready and willing to participate, our own Kelly Adams. Kelly has the pleasure of serving also as a division director for this year. She was involved in diversity throughout her entire time with our division, but she stepped up to the plate when she received that call. Okay, maybe it wasn't exactly a call, maybe I kind of pushed her, but whatever the case, she was happy to come and she was happy to join us. Since then, Kelly has been a champion for the causes. Not only did she give us one program, but she gave us a series of programs, 4 programs. And this one is the 4th of that series, and that is Activate Diversity, Lead by Example. So I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly as she welcomes you to again and gives you more information about the diversity series and what you can expect from us this evening. So please, if you could, everyone take a moment. I know everybody don't like to be interactive on these Zooms, but you could go to reactions and put a hand clap up for the best division director a person could ever have. Kelly, I welcome you to the screen.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm actually gonna wipe the tears. She got me. 4 series in and she got me. I want to first say thank you for that incredible introduction. I also want to take the time, this is our last series, to say thank you to every single person on the diversity board that has helped us with these series. It's been an amazing ride and you put on an incredible program. Right now, though, I would like to take the time because I have the distinct honor of introducing our ABA's president-elect, Reginald Turner. He will share with you a few words of support. Thank you. I know he's here.
There we are. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate the introduction and I appreciate having the opportunity to spend some time with GP Solo and your Lead by Example program. This is the 4th and final event of your series, which began with an equally important focus on making good trouble with your ballot. The title of today's program suggests a wonderful opportunity for us to be leaders and supporters of diversity, equity, and inclusion, an ideal that is not just popular terminology to me, but a lifestyle. I was exposed to diversity among people at a young age, growing up in Detroit. Following the riot of 1967, my parents looked for ways to heal our family, and we were enrolled in a program led by an organization called Focus Hope that paired white suburban families with City of Detroit African-American families, Negro families as we were called in those days. And I learned a great deal about diversity through that Focus Hope program. Later, and as a law clerk to Michigan Supreme Court Justice Dennis Archer in 1987, 88, and 89, I had the pleasure of watching him work with Rachel Patrick of the ABA staff to create the ABA's Commission on Opportunities for Minorities in the Profession, which is now blossomed into the ABA Diversity Center, which many of you know well, and in which many of you have spent time and worked to help move forward the ABA's diversity programs. Goal 3 of the ABA is to eliminate bias and enhance diversity. It is one of only 4 goals of our association. The ABA has redoubled its efforts on this front and charged all of our entities to ensure that DEI is at the forefront of their missions as well. As president-elect of the ABA, diversity will be a concept that I will continue to champion during my term. I believe the legal profession will experience its greatest success when it is fully embracing of a diverse population of talents that reflect the people with whom we represent. I extend my gratitude to section members and staff for your wonderful work to tackle these matters, and especially over the last year, which presented many new challenges, but also new opportunities to be better. Thank you to the esteemed program speakers for being with us today. We're in great company, and we appreciate your expertise. Again, thanks for all that all of you do, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in our beloved American Bar Association.
Thank you, President-elect Reginald Turner. We don't take it lightly that you were able to take out time out of your busy schedule to speak to us, and we really appreciate it. And we take your words to heart. So thank you for joining us this evening. At this time, I would like to introduce Bobby Wilson. I again have the distinct privilege of introducing Mr. Wilson of the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate Dakota tribe. He is a poet, actor, writer, visual artist, and comedian. His work is heavily influenced by his Dakota heritage and his city upbringing, and he ties in commentary on colonization, racism, modern imagery of Native American peoples, homelessness, and other issues faced by Indigenous people today. Mr. Wilson is known as one of the founding members of the Indian sketch comedy group of the 1491s. He has written a poem, For Us, a custom piece of art just for us. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Wilson. Thank you.
Yay, am I on? I sure am. Just making sure before I say something really profound and then have to repeat it because it won't sound as good if I say it the second time around. Never does. Hello, hi, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? I'm Bobby Wilson. Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate. You're welcome. I'm Dakota. Not to be confused with Lakota from the hit documentary Dances with Wolves. But no, the ones who used to be up around the Great Lakes. Keyword used to. I wrote a poem for y'all, and I'm gonna be perfectly 100% honest with you people. Honest Injun. That's my commitment to the life that I live. When I first was asked to do this, I was like, oh yeah, it's for like the law students, this kids out here getting their degrees going in there. And then I signed on to the little check-in last week, and I was like, oh, these are not law students. These are like real deal Holyfields over here. And it filled me with all sorts of feelings about it. I think I made some kind of joke about not having stood before a judge for quite some time. And the last time that I did, it wasn't so great for me. So anyway, I'm sitting, do something. Judge, your honors, your friends, your relatives. No, I'm not trying to be combative. I just, I'm happy to be here. I just, I get nervous before I talk to all you guys because I don't know how you feel about it. I can't hear any applause. I can't hear any laughs or anything like that. But I'm just going to go ahead and do what most Indian men do best, power through a very long speech. So without further ado, I would like to share with you this poetry that I have composed over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully you like it. If you don't tell me. Tell your local representatives. Look at you. Look at you. First day of school, look in your eyes. Finally got a view of that tabletop, did you? And tell me, what color is the runner? Seems like everybody knows everybody up here. So where are you supposed to sit? Maybe just stand. They always play that damn anthem. Pledge allegiance to red and white and blue and all those goody two shoes with their hands on their hearts. Finger snaps for everybody on one knee. Better find your seat. And the ones in the back, well, look at you. Too cool to stand a knee. Believe me, I know the feeling. Exhausted with the team sports. But the bench has been giving me sores. and we're getting too old to do nothing. So look at you. Aspiration made action. And this table is big enough for all of us. Strange about the table, though. It's carved so beautifully. Legs like Roman pillars in their prime. Carved with care and craftsmanship. Took over 500 years to make this thing. Each hand made improvements as they saw fit for their time. Wood made from clear-cut mothers. Gallows from our fathers. Lacquered in afterbirth. There's claw marks underneath. But you know that, don't you? We just want to see the appetizers. But damn, look at you, digging into a hot meal. I'm beaming with pride. No bullshit. I mean it. Sister, mother, uncle, brother. You closed your eyes when you got there. Without fear, though. You knew what was there. And so you bowed your head in reverence and pledged to do something better. And I thank you for remembering where you are. And that's your poem. Hope you liked it. You know, again, if you didn't, tell somebody else. I'm not going to look in the chats. I don't read the comments. Do you? Is that relevant to me? Okay, I did me.
That was awesome. Thank you very much. If everyone could just give him an applause, either he can see it. Well, he's not looking, I don't think. Definitely don't put in the comments because he's not reading the comments. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. That was incredible.
No, I'll read the comments.
You will? Okay. Maybe if you would, please.
Any compliments are welcome.
All right. A written version of that would be so nice so we can have it and something we can go back and reflect on. Thank you very much.
I'll email you.
All right. At this time, I would like to introduce to you our moderator of the evening. This young woman is incredible. She is this year's Diversity Fellow. Her name is Janaan Hashim. She is co-founder of Emma Law Group. This law firm is the first US founded law firm by 6 Muslim women, and it was founded in 2007. Her practice areas include civil rights. But before that, before private practice, she was an assistant appellate defender, and she has been rocking it ever since. I would like to say you guys are in for a treat. One of the hardest working women I've ever met. I'm privileged to know. Please welcome Janaan Hashim.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate that. Very kind remarks, especially the young part. Nice to hear that once in a while. I'd also like to start off by thanking the entire committee, the Diversity Board, GP Solo, and of course the ABA for making the Activate Diversity series happen. Since the week before elections through tonight, we have addressed and learned about voting rights, minorities in professional sports, criminal justice reform, and tonight we're going to celebrate as we reflect under the theme Activate Diversity, Lead by Example. Our trailblazing panelists will discuss civil rights, minority communities, and our growing diversity in terms of how far our nation has come since its founding, where we are today, and then looking ahead to how we can make tomorrow a better future, not just in the legal field, but in our own personal circles as well. So before I introduce the panelists, we're going to start off with the first part of a video that we compiled. See, about 6 weeks ago or so, we asked people to send us their clips telling us how they will activate diversity and lead by example. And with well over 24 submissions, we had to split them in half, and we're going to give you the first 4-minute video, and then toward the end, we're going to wrap it up. You can see the rest of their tremendous responses. So let's go ahead and pull up the video and see what we have.
Greetings, I'm Alfreda Coward, and I have the pleasure of serving as chair of the GP Solo Division, which happens to be the best division in the American Bar Association. As chair, I identified 2 themes that were important for my administration, and one of those themes is Activate Diversity. Activate Diversity is a 4-part series where we increase awareness on very important topics in our community. As a division, we're committed to celebrating not just the similarities in those things that we have in common, but we also celebrate our differences. On a personal basis, I activate diversity every day by leading by example and serving as a role model. I also have the opportunity, and I continue to serve as a voice for the voiceless. So there are things that we can do as lawyers. There are things that we can do as division members. There are things that we can do as American Bar Association members. And there are things that we can do just in the community to activate diversity. So tell me, what is it that you can do to activate diversity? I'm waiting to hear about it.
I will lead and activate diversity by serving as a mentor for other first-generation law students such as myself, and by pursuing a legal career where I can support minority and Black-owned businesses.
I will lead and activate diversity by being intentional in my decisions and making sure that provide as many opportunities for historically disadvantaged, marginalized groups and trying to create equitable outcomes to allow them to have success.
I will activate diversity by creating a space for individuals who look like me to achieve their dreams just like someone helped me.
I will activate diversity by continuing to promote amongst underserved youth, speak out against inequalities and limited opportunities available for minorities.
I will lead and activate diversity by reaching down and making sure that I pull up someone just as I was pulled up. I leave no one on the bottom floor. Everyone rises up in the elevator and everyone gets a seat at the table.
Lead and activate diversity by educating as many of these law students that I teach here and others that I come into contact with on social media about the history of Blacks and brown people in our legal system, about some of the amazing things that we've been able to do, and why it is that future brown and Black men and women can become successful attorneys and judges.
Lead and activate diversity by mentoring the next generation, by enforcing and developing civil rights law, and working towards an inclusive democracy in our country, and reminding folks that when you have challenges, work towards overcoming them, because as Cesar Chavez said, once social change begins, it cannot be undone.
I will lead and activate diversity by continuing to reach out to my Native communities as well as local communities and participate in grassroots organizations and projects that help increase enfranchisement of disenfranchised persons.
I will lead and activate diversity by increasing the pipeline of diverse attorneys, staffing diverse attorneys on my matters, and making sure that I have a diverse legal team in-house.
I will lead and activate diversity by continuing to be engaged in positive changes for under and misrepresented people. I will be intentional about being a resource for those who are looking for an opportunity but struggle with the real and current systemic barriers set before us.
All right, what a great way to kick off our discussion. I now have the distinct pleasure and privilege of introducing our incredible panelists tonight, all leaders in their respective fields. We have Oregon Supreme Court Justice Adrienne Nelson. She is the first African-American to serve on the state's highest court in its 161-year history. She was appointed in January 2018 by Governor Kate Brown and was elected to a full 6-year term in November 2018. Because of a death in the family, Nihad Awad, Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, will be unable to join us. However, sitting in for him, we have CAIR's Deputy Director, Attorney Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Founded in 1994, CAIR is the largest nonprofit Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization in the United States. DeRay Mckesson will be joining us through a pre-recorded video. DeRay Mckesson is a civil rights activist and the co-founder of Campaign Zero, a policy platform to end police violence. And attorney Jenrette-Thomas is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Stinson LLP, where she takes an innovative approach when it comes to addressing diversity-related challenges within the firm and the profession. And of course, staying with us is our very own artist and comedian, Bobby Wilson. So thank you everyone for joining us. So we're going to start off by taking a look at the past. And when looking at civil rights in the United States, it's not unfair to say that we have come some distance from where our country first started, in which civil rights were pretty much afforded only to white Protestant land-owning, thus very wealthy men. It's been a long road with maybe a 2-step forward and 1-step back trajectory. Justice Nelson, you have been a part of that trajectory with your own life, starting notably as a young high school valedictorian of the class of 1985. And yet your high school administration tried to pass you over for the next in line, a white person. As I understand it, thanks to your mom, her fortitude, and using the legal system, the administration was unsuccessful in their attempt. So my question to you is, what is your assessment of where we were to where we are now, particularly looking at the modern era?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. That is an excellent question. And I am also wanting to say thank you to Solo and its officers and everyone who created this program and this series. It's an honor to be here with everyone. And thank you, Bobby Wilson, for that incredible poem. I want to say that out loud. So, it's really interesting. I think we're in an inflection point. I call it a racial reckoning, if you will, because you are absolutely correct. There has been some progress, and then there's also been some regression. And I believe that this time, as unprecedented as it is, has brought us to the point that we are. Without COVID, people would have been able to kind of continue their lives and have the option of looking away. But because we were all grappling with this global pandemic as a country, and people have access to technology and social media, people were able to deal with things that have been happening in the past and quite frankly, continue to happen in the present because there have been additional names added, where we couldn't look away and people had to come to a reckoning. And I realize that many people are asking often for the first time, who are we? And how did things get where we are now? And what I want to say is we have to go back and look at history, because history actually lives in the present. And because our history has caught up with us as a nation, we have to push further. We have to think about those little people like I was, who had something happen to her because of race, and how that's going to affect our community. I am so grateful that it had been a 30-year span between one school board meeting that I attended and another one that I attended in 2018. And that was the community that I live in, which is not as diverse, but getting more diverse, decided that they wanted to name a high school after me. So that's a point of progress, but it was not without contention. And there were many voices that had to continue. But I'm so excited as the school is going to be opening later this fall, that we had a group of students who sat for the mural talk about what they envisioned. And often with the movements and the positive change in our country, we see it often coming from those that are younger, that are willing to put themselves at risk. And then when they get older, like someone like me, you can continue to be a bridge. Now I'm said older, not old, because I have a lot left in me. But those experiences will affect us. And it teaches us how we all need to be beacons for the rule of law, because the cumulative effects of what we do will cause justice to roll down like water. Because as Dr. Martin Luther King said, let us realize that the arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's because justice anywhere is a threat injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that because we're all connected, we have to get together. And I believe that despite the problems that we need to deal with, and they're stubborn, the efforts of what GP Solo's doing, other areas of the ABA, I'm chair of the ABA Diversity Center on inclusion in the legal profession. We are working toward creating those experiences. So I really feel like we are at a moment where, if you will, the Band-Aid has been ripped off. And we can kind of go deeper than the surface. And we can start digging deeper and deeper. So I'm making sure that I'm mindful of the time. I know I get to say other things, but I just think that we're at a point where we can do a lot. And one thing I want to say is, I believe we have an opportunity that is now. And I hope we all can bravely meet it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I like your closing thoughts there in terms of we're at a point where we can do a lot. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah.
And hopefully tonight's program will generate some ideas for those who need ideas, and will motivate people who already have ideas to take that next step. So now let's take a look at the present, first examining minorities in the broader sense, to include racial, ethnic, and religious minorities. Mr. Mitchell, you have been in the thick of it, and although Islamophobia was not invented after 9/11, political and social reactions to 9/11 fueled ignorance and bigotry and violence toward Muslims and those who look like Muslims. According to the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, American Muslims are the most ethnically diverse faith group in the US, and at 28%, a plurality of Muslims identify as Black or African American. So here's my question. What is your assessment of Islamophobia today? And can you touch base on hate crimes against other faith communities that you and your organization have crossed paths with?
Sure. So first, good afternoon, everyone. A pleasure to be with you, and assalamu alaikum, Janaan. Thank you so much to the ABA for hosting this event. So let me start by noting that, as Janaan mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director of CARE National. I'm also a civil rights attorney by training, and CARE is our nation's largest Muslim civil rights organization. Our main focus, our bread and butter, is countering anti-Muslim bigotry in both the court of law and the court of public opinion. And so to your question, what is the state of Islamophobia in America right now? I think we have to start by defining Islamophobia. And there are many definitions, but the one we use most often is simply anti-Muslim bigotry, whether that manifests itself in discrimination or hate crime or simply an ugly look, just bigotry against a Muslim simply because they're a Muslim. And so in that way, it's similar to anti-Semitism or racism and irrational prejudice towards an entire group of people simply because of their identity. Now, the state of Islamophobia in America, how can we even assess that? So to assess it, I look at several different factors. I look at the ways that Islamophobia most often manifests itself in our country. And then I look to see what are the trend lines in those manifestations. So the main ways that I think we as CARE notice Islamophobia manifesting itself in this country are the following. First and foremost, employment discrimination. That's the most common type of bigotry we deal with, Muslims being targeted in the workplace because of their faith. Second, hate crimes, Muslims being violently, physically attacked because of their religion. Third, public attitudes of Muslims. What percentage of Americans simply have a negative view of Muslims or Islam simply because of the identity of the Islamic faith and those of its followers. Next is anti-Islam legislation in state legislatures. That's another common way we look to see the trend of Islamophobia in America. Another way is immigration. What policies is our immigration system perpetuating, and how are those policies uniquely impacting Muslims? National security. In terms of national security policies, how are those policies impacting Muslims here and abroad? Police brutality, that's another major issue. School bullying, and then opposition to the construction of mosques. Now, what's interesting about all those issues is that they intersect with other communities. Because Muslims are the most diverse religious group in the United States, It is literally impossible to discuss Islamophobia without also discussing anti-immigrant bigotry, xenophobia, without discussing racism and police brutality, given that so many American Muslims are African American. And so when we're confronting Islamophobia, we are by definition also confronting many other societal ills that impact other communities. And so now, because I know my time is short, we got about 3 minutes, I'm going to just briefly give you my assessment of where Islamophobia stands. I believe that Islamophobia in America right now is still a serious threat to the American Muslim community and therefore America at large, but it's not as bad as it was a few years ago, and it's heading in the right direction. And I'll give you a few examples and then wrap up. First, employment discrimination. When CARE first started 25 years ago, the first major case we took was trying to convince JCPenney to allow Muslim women to wear a hijab while working at their store. That was the beginning. Now, there's no question that Muslim women have the right to wear a hijab, that men have the right to grow beards, that people can pray briefly at work. Those are set and accepted legal precedents. Right now, we're actually debating whether or not Muslim police officers can wear hijabs or grow beards. So in terms of employment discrimination, it's still a major, major issue, but the law is now clearly on our side. Hate crimes. Hate crimes increased obviously after 9/11. They spiked dramatically in 2010 after the Tea Party took office in the elections that year, and then increased dramatically during the reign of Donald Trump and the violence of ISIS. But they are down. In the past few years, we've seen the trend line of anti-Muslim hate crimes going down. Still a major threat, but going down. Public attitudes about Muslims. After 9/11, they increased negative a little bit, but not as much as you might think. Again, in 2010, we saw a huge spike in negative sentiments about Muslims because anti-Muslim hate groups got really organized that year. And then obviously continued to increase during the Trump campaign. And we've now seen them stabilize and start to improve a little bit. Anti-Sharia legislation, those are state laws designed to ban Sharia, which is not a threat to anyone's legal system. But nonetheless, that was very common from 2010 to 2016. We fought those pieces of legislation. And in the states where they passed, they were so watered down as to be just nothingness. And where the states where they were really serious, we defeated them in court. And we haven't seen those bills popping up in recent years. So that is a positive thing. And then finally, in terms of representation, I think that's another way you can see how things are going. Muslims are much more well represented in Hollywood, in political office, in the media. That's a positive trend line. In terms of police brutality, that is still a very significant threat to African Americans, including African American Muslims. We recently saw a Muslim woman shot and killed in Georgia while wearing a hijab. We saw a Muslim man in Arizona strangled to death in a situation very similar to George Floyd. The man called out to Allah, to God, for help, and the police said, Allah can't help you now, and killed him. So police brutality, a major issue. Mosque projects, that's another area where we've seen a lot of positive improvement in Muslims being able to build houses of worship. Immigration, national security, those things have really not improved. The Muslim ban is gone, but there's so many systemic problems in the immigration system, the national security state that negatively impact Muslims. The terrorist watch list, the no-fly list, FBI entrapment, those are all major and persistent issues. So I've gone a little over time, so I'm going to wrap up and just say there are many issues still persisting, but Islamophobia, we believe, is going in the right direction, but it's going to take a lot more work. And to succeed in defeating Islamophobia, we've got to make sure we are approaching in a holistic way, also addressing all the other issues that intersect with Islamophobia. Our goal is not to erase it. Our goal is to reduce it from a mortal threat to an annoying nuisance, God willing.
Annoying nuisance. I like that because, you know, with nuisances, you can just kind of swat them away. So thank you very much for that assessment. I appreciate in that overview. We're going to now take a look at a recorded interview that I had earlier this week with civil rights activist DeRay Mckesson. Thank you, DeRay Mckesson, for taking the time to join us. I appreciate it.
It's so good to be here.
All right. So I would like to start off with giving our attendees who might not know much about you and the work that you do, a bit of background as to your work as a civil rights activist. In your book, Other Side of Freedom, The Case for Hope, you describe one of the moments in your life where, to use your words, death felt near. This was in 2014. Ferguson seems like decades ago. Can you describe, though, what happened at the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department headquarters?
Yeah, so we did a sit-in, and it was organized by an incredible set of organizers. It was like probably 15 of us who or inside the police department, and we just sat in, and the police had never seen anything like it. It's the first sit-in in a police department that we had seen. And the police, as you can imagine, were very upset with us, but it was a police department, right? So it's cameras everywhere. Like they know they can't like hit us because there's no way that there's not a camera in the police department lobby. So what they do is that they drag us out of the building by our ankles. So like I get literally like an officer comes up to me and just drags me out. And I'll never forget, that moment was just so wild. Like I think she dragged me, but before there was this officer who just stood over me with her hand on her taser and her gun. And it was just like, well, this is not it, it was just rough.
And in your book, you stated that when this happens, you see an officer with a hand on a taser and then to the gun, that's it must be very shocking. Everything, so much is going through your mind. And you said that it leads to the why of what you do and is it worth the cost? So can you share with us your answer to the why of what you do and how it is worth the cost? Because I assume that it is because you're still doing it.
Yeah, I look up and one of the most important things I've ever done was I taught 6th grade math. And I think about all of the 11-year-olds that I taught and their families and the world they live in. And I just know that they deserve a better world than the one that they grew up in, that it's not their fault why the outcomes are like this. And when I think about my why, it's always rooted in I know this isn't the best version of the world. And I know that the only way that we'll get it is if we fight for it and bring it to be ourselves. And that keeps me grounded. That keeps me hopeful. Those moments, though, when you're this might be the end, this is hard, or this might be really bad. Those are the moments when you really are do I believe? And it's I do. And I want to fight. I want to go to the end for the things I believe in. And those moments really made me recommit.
Okay, so let's go ahead and shift gears and look at the work that you do, that you're committed to, and Campaign Zero as well. You co-founded Campaign Zero. This is an organization that provides a comprehensive package of policy solutions aimed toward changing for the better the way police serve our communities. And importantly, these solutions are informed by data, research, and human rights principles. Campaign Zero lists 9 policy areas. It identifies their problems and provides practical solutions, including samples of local and state laws, which I think are very, very useful. Now, as much as I'd like to go through all 9, our time is limited. So let's just go ahead and start with excessive force, because despite the hundreds of lives taken by the police, a disproportionate majority of those lives being people of color, it wasn't until last year when it was caught on camera the death and dying words of George Floyd, in which much of not just the United States, but the world came together in protest of what they saw. So Campaign Zero advocates for police to have the skills and cultural competence to protect and serve our communities without killing people. What are the policy solutions that Campaign Zero offers to minimize excessive force while keeping officers safe? We have a delicate balance here, but it's a reasonable interest that we have on both sides.
Yeah, so to be clear, we don't do anything about officer safety or cultural competency. There's no data to suggest that the police aren't safe. The police are probably the safest people. Police aren't being attacked. The number one cause of death by police is actually COVID right now. But other than that is death by suicide. So there's a myth, and we don't participate in perpetuating the myth of officer safety because it's not a thing. Now, what we do say is that the police kill about 1,100 people a year, and we zoom out and we're reminded of that. So when we look at the data, the highest number of convictions ever for police officers who kill is 11 officers. That is the highest ever. So officers know that it's very unlikely that they're going to be disciplined and almost impossible for them to be prosecuted for these killings. Now, when we think about, there are 3 big campaigns that we have active right now. One is called 8 Can't Wait. It's about use of force, policies and laws all across the country. So things that are basic, common sense, just not commonplace. Things like no chokeholds and strangleholds, requiring officers to report every time they point their weapon at somebody, no shooting into moving vehicles, de-escalation is required. So those things are really important. The second campaign we have is around police union contracts. We maintain the only database of police union contracts in the United States, an Officer Bill of Rights. So there are these laws and policies that protect the police from discipline, oversight, accountability, or provide money for when they engage in wrongdoing. So we track that, and that's a big deal. And then we have a campaign that was inspired by Breonna Taylor that is about ending no-knock raids across the country. So we are focused on that. And like those 3 campaigns are the campaigns that we have active right now. But we support legislators all across the country and activists who are working on any type of legislation regarding policing. So
let's take a look first at the fair police contracts. When you look at what's posted on your website as to the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights, you take a big look at the big picture. There's protection. I mean, a union is there to protect its own people and so forth. I imagine there would be great pushback with the policies and solutions that y'all are offering. What are some are there any like low-hanging solutions that can begin the gears of change when it comes down to police contracts?
Yeah, so all of these things we would say are low-hanging. All these things are really basic. So when you look at protections for the police, there are places like Columbus. In Columbus, the contract says that you have to file a complaint against an officer within 60 days of the alleged event. 60 days isn't long. If you get put in a coma for 50 days and, you only have 10 days to do it, that doesn't make sense. There's no reason why we close the window for complaints, especially when we know only 1 in 12 complaints across the country is sustained, when we know that police like in Baltimore were throwing away the complaints anyway. So those things don't make sense. There are a lot of places that just destroy police officer disciplinary records after 2 years, 5 years, or they say that you can't even do a look back. So after 2 years, so say a police officer beat somebody to a bloody pulp, after 2 years, you can never even reference that again. You can't bring it up, can't think about it. Those things don't make sense. The police have the legal right to kill people in communities. That's a big power, and that we should actually make sure that power is always checked, that we should always make sure that power is under civilian review for as long as the police exist. So we would say everything that we advocate for is actually common sense. We don't think any of this is controversial. The only pushback that the police offer is fear mongering. So, there are states and cities that have laws that say that officers can't be immediately interrogated when they kill somebody. The research basis for that is it doesn't exist. There's a police officer who one day literally said that officers have the hardest job in America, so that when they kill people, they need at least 2 sleep cycles so that the adrenaline can drain from their system and their memory can be at its best. They made that up. So the police we're never fighting research or facts. We are always fighting myths, innuendo, and fear.
And is that working and chipping away? Because on the one hand, you have city council, on the other hand, you have the fraternity order of police. Is the work that you're doing able to convince both of these parties to listen to what you have to say and to make the adjustments?
Yeah, so the FOP are the least likely to be at the table to talk about solutions, but everybody else is really likely to be at the table and talk about solutions. Everybody else has actually been a really good partner in thinking about what we do and how we fix this. So that is good. Again, I'm mindful that the police kill about 1,100 people a year. I did 2 things that we didn't know. So the first is, you think about 2020, the police actually killed more people in 2020 than every year of data we have available but 2018. So for all of the conversation that 2020 engendered, it got worse. The second thing is that the police kill more people in suburban communities than almost all other communities combined. It's not cities. Everybody thought it was cities. Cities was what people paid attention to. Cities is where the media focus is. City is where the organizing focus is, but cities is actually not where the problem is most acute. So some of this is you don't need to be a genius to say that you got to do the work where the problem is. And I think that for so many, for a long time, that actually hasn't been the case. We all thought it was cities because that's what the media narrative has been. And it's not cities. It's actually suburban and rural communities that it's increasing, but suburban communities where it's most acute.
Is there, the social scientists said why it's the suburbs and not the cities? I mean, you explained why we think it's the cities, and it makes sense. If the media is portraying it, if pop culture is portraying it, that's what we're going to think it is, whether it's correct or not. But is there a reason why it's the suburbs and not the cities?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We just realized it was cities in February of 2020. So it's a pretty new analysis that we did. And it was just a hunch to check and be just to figure out what the trends were looking like. And then it was oh, snap, it's actually not, this is the suburbs, it's not the cities.
Okay, fair enough. So let's take a look at the broken window policing. That's another policy area that is that y'all have posted. This is an area, as I understand, that affects mostly people of color neighborhoods. Can you explain for our attendees, really in a nutshell, what this is? And then we'll talk about the solutions that y'all are offering.
Yeah, so we don't have a campaign around this right now, but this is this idea that in almost every place across the country, the highest percentage of arrests is for low-level arrests. That people think that the highest percentage of arrests is for violent crime. Like that's, when you ask people, that's what people believe, but it's not true. Nationally, only 5% of arrests are for violent crime. And this is a campaign that reminds people that people believe that low-level arrest is the way that you keep communities safe. Like that's what Broken Windows essentially says. And we don't believe that. We don't have an active campaign about this. This is just something that we know is wrong and that we want to highlight.
Fair enough. And within that, there's the mention of stop and frisk, which takes any lawyer back to the first year of law school and the rules of that surround stop and frisk and how it came about. Stop and frisk combined with racial profiling is what is highlighted. On the one hand, the U.S. Supreme Court has said that profiling is not prohibited, is not unlawful per se. And yet, New York and California and even the U.S. Congress have introduced bills to make the profiling unlawful. Do you know, or can you talk about the common arguments that opponents would have to such a bill, and how would you counter those arguments?
Yeah, like I said, I'd love to talk about another project we have a campaign around. This is, and the only reason I say that is I will push and say that so much of the social justice space focuses on the problem. So we sort of, it's like an echo about how we sort of echo all the things that we already know, as opposed to talking about what the solutions are at the structural level. We spend almost all of our time focused on the solution space, and we don't have an active campaign about ending low-level arrests. The solutions about how to do this is a little more complicated than has entered into the public space. So there are things that we can do around diversion. There are really cool ways that we can expunge things. So we can make things, instead of misdemeanors, we can make them citations only, right? So like there are hosts of things that we can do to keep people out of the carceral space while also making sure that public safety is key. I think that the only thing I'd add around low-level arrests is that when we look at the data all across the country, in almost every single city and town, the majority of arrests are for low-level things and not for violence. A reminder that we can do diversion, that there are a host of things that we can do that are not incarceration. When we think again about the biggest levers, we think about accountability, which is around contracts. We think about use of force, which is around that whole bucket around force. And then we're doing something around no-knocks, which is around the demilitarization bucket.
So let's take a quick look at demilitarization. What is that campaign focusing on?
So there are a lot of components to demil, but when we think about the most popular, it's like it's the federal program that gives police departments money. So, we're interested in that, but we also know that there are a lot of police departments that buy these weapons on their own. We know that the majority of these weapons are used either during the protests or during the execution of raids, which is why we have a campaign called End All No Knocks that is about tightening up and restricting the way that officers can both use weapons, can engage in community, can do anything during the execution of search warrants, whether they are no-knock warrants or regular knock and announce warrants. So this campaign, we're in 45 cities and states working right now to tighten up the legislation around no-knocks, and we're excited about that.
All right. So my final question to you is actually a practical one. For those of us in the legal profession who want to be a part of the force of change, to be a part of ending police misconduct and improving things, what can we do?
Yeah, so we have some volunteer opportunities. We're working with a new campaign once a month. We're always looking for people to help us think through things. We're about to do a campaign on felony theft. So, across the country, the amount that you can be convicted of felony for theft is really low. So in New Jersey, it's $200. It was set in 1978. The highest in the country is Wisconsin and Texas. We'd love people to help us work on that campaign. You could email me at DeRay@DeRay.com. We're also interested in pay to stay. So every state charges room and board for people who are incarcerated. And that doesn't make sense. So we're working right now to tighten up the data set on that and to do a campaign about that. So there are things in the pipe that we'd love to work with people on.
All All right, terrific. Well, thank you so much, DeRay, for joining us and taking the time to share with us the work that Campaign Zero is working on and the work that you're doing. Stay safe in many, many different arenas that you're in. And again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Talk to you later.
You got it. So folks, real quickly, the title of his book is Other Side of Freedom, The Case for Hope, and website is joincampaignzero.org. All right. That was packed with a lot of information for us, and seeing that we're getting so many different views and a lot of information. If you guys have any questions or answers, go ahead and put them into the chat. We will be reserving some time to go through some of those and ask our panelists any questions that you might have for us. So now we've taken a look at the present. We're going to shift our gear and take a look at the future. The Brookings Institution, citing a U.S. Census Bureau report, states that it is expected that racial minority populations, especially Hispanic, Asian, and Black Americans, continue to expand, leaving fewer parts of the country untouched by diversity. So let's look at that and how we can utilize this in ways that not only benefit our profession, but ourselves and those within our circles. Ms. Jenrette-Thomas, diversity and inclusion is your life's work. Under your leadership at Stinson, the firm, among other advances, saw a 120% increase in lawyers of color in 4 years. You utilize a two-pronged approach that centers on individual responsibility and eradicating the effects of bias through systems and process. So can you share with us your top do and your top don't for each of these prongs and why they are your top ones?
I can't give you a top do or don't because really it's so pervasive. Given the history that Justice Nelson had indicated, that is baked throughout the entirety of our profession, you know, from the laws to how our different organizations are structured to how people can advance in the ranks. But what I can share with you is that because this is about leading by example and activating diversity, there is a place for each of you to make a change. So when we're looking at disrupting bias or disrupting the system to make it more inclusive, I want you to look at it from 4 different lenses and realize where you personally can, you know, make an impact. The individual. So here, this is about understanding your own biases, not only with respect to other groups, but also with respect maybe to your own group, you know, internalized oppression or internalized views and how that might be filtering into different points in which you're making decisions. So for example, a lot of people are not necessarily aware of how they might clench up if they see somebody that looks suspicious or whatever suspicious means to them, but there's just different places where you can really start to become aware. So a good place is to start by taking the implicit association test. If you Google it, these are by Project, they're by Project Implicit out in Harvard University, but it will give you a sense based on your physiological reactions, whether or not your body is unveiling a particular bias that you might have. And that's it's not a place for you to go into judgment about yourself, but it really is a place for you to say, oh, how can I improve in this area? So the next is interpersonal. So this is how we as individuals end up connecting with people across differences or even within our own communities. So here, what you want to be mindful of is people tend to have their trusted circle look very homogenous, you know, very similar to aspects of their own identity. And what that can end up doing is create these silos. We saw that rampantly during this last election cycle where, you know, people have been just so divided and functioning solely within their silos to the point that where there isn't even conversation or dialogue happening across differences. So no matter where you are, one exercise you can do for yourself is take a look at, just write initials or the first name of the 10 people in your professional circle that you trust the most. And then try and identify their gender, their race, their religion, different aspects of their identity. And if you notice homogeny, then look for opportunities on how you can expand. And the reason why this is so critical is in our profession, so much of it is relationship based. You know, who gets the best opportunities, who gets access to different events, who gets the mentoring, etc. It all is relationship driven. And so the more we can expand that circle of trust, that's important. And to check yourself if you are setting an unfair bar when you're dealing with people of your own identity. So sometimes we've seen this where we're like, okay, I had to struggle to get to this level. Why can't you just, follow in the same footsteps, do the same kind of work so that you too can succeed like I did? So just be mindful of that. But this is the interpersonal. The third element, and these last two are both the elements of systemic bias. One is in your organization. So this is the third element. No matter what organization you are in, bias is baked in. So it's baked into policies, practices, and the norms of what that institution does. And so what you want to do is look for, where are we seeing a disparate outcome? Where are some groups just seem to get it and it's easy and it's no problem, and other groups it's a struggle, or we don't see enough of them? And that is pointing to you in terms of areas for potential change. So an example of that is, I am in big law, so some of you might be familiar with it, but in order to get assignments, it's essentially a free market system. And so typically a partner, and most partners in big law tend to be, white men who have a large book of business. They are the ones who assign who gets the work. Well, affinity bias can really create a disparate outcome for people who are people of color or women or LGBTQ or any other underrepresented group. The fourth element of another element of systemic bias is across institutions. So the media impacts our laws and what gets enacted. Our laws impact our judiciary, our, within the legal profession, how prosecutors and defense counsel interact, have an impact. What I'm basically saying is there are opportunities for us to expand our own circle and figure out where is the bias thread kind of weaving in across multiple institutions or across multiple industries, and how could we create some change there? So I wanted to just give you all a framework for how you approach your future opportunities to engage and disrupt the systems. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm not muted in my head. I can promise you that. Sometimes I wish I were. But thank you very much for providing that summary and helping us think about what we can do internally and externally in making ourselves better people. And for that matter, our law firms. I'm going to keep the floor open for people to send us some questions. I'm going to ask our panelists as a group a couple of questions. In reviewing this week's headlines here in the Midwest, I'm in Chicago. We see that the Illinois governor signed a criminal justice reform bill that included many things that last summer's protesters were calling for, such like things like eliminating cash bail, requiring all police to wear body cameras, and so forth. Kenosha, Wisconsin's Carthage College retired their mascot, Red Men and Lady Reds, which seems to be a trend in high schools and universities across the US, just as Valparaiso University in Indiana announced that they are abandoning their mascot, the Crusaders, because of associations to religious oppression, violence, and hate groups. So here's my question to the group. Are the wheels of change actually moving? And if so, does this mark the progress of a maturing society, to use Justice Earl Warren's words? Or is it more of a knee-jerk reaction here today, likely scaled back, watered down tomorrow, maybe gone altogether?
Poor thing. Didn't pay the internet bill. Just kidding.
If I can finish your question, we'll start with Justice Nelson, and then I'd like to hear from Mr. Wilson thoughts. Ms. Jenrette-Thompson and Mr. Mitchell, do you either of you have anything to add?
So, I think it is an interesting question, and I think that it ties into what I had said earlier. People are looking at taking down all kinds of things because of the history and the narrative attached to it. I'm not sure if it's a knee-jerk reaction. I do think it's a beginning. I don't have a sense of where it's going to end, but I see that it's growing. Not only is it happening in the Midwest, I see it happening all over parts of the country. As you remember, there was a whole conversation about taking down of monuments in New Orleans, and we're having that discussion here in Oregon, and I'm sure other places are. So what I see this is part of people acknowledging that the narrative of history has been narrow. And as you expand the narratives and the experiences and acknowledge the lived experiences of everyone that are not always positive, that it causes reactions. And I think that it will continue.
Okay, and Mr. Wilson, what are your thoughts there? And I'm bringing you in because of
you feel bad for me. I get it. I'm just sitting here and I got nothing to say. I
got lots to say. We know it. We know it. And your perspective is very important.
Hey, appreciate that. Yeah, no, mascots are stupid and they're changing. Finally. No, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. I don't think it happened suddenly. I mean, there's nothing in this country that happened all of a sudden. As long as you've had people that are being oppressed, you've always had, oppressed people saying, hey, fucking quit, I'm just trying to live here. And I do think that the wheels of change are turning. I think they've been turning since I was born. And I think I'm very fortunate in this experience in life to be able to witness those changes. And I think the knee-jerk reactions that we're seeing are, like the Donald Trump stuff, Proud Boys, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to sit here and give them all, my time and energy in my mental life, but that's a real thing. I had a Proud Boy the other day hold the door for me and say, "You're welcome, brother."
All right, Ms. Jenrette-Thomas, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that this is just the nature of social justice movements, and we're in the flow part, not the ebb part, but we will, see another backlash come back. And the hope is always that the backlash is just a little bit lessened than the progress we've made, so that as we kind of rest and gear up, the next version comes through. And I think what's different about this moment in time in particular is George Floyd's death activated the hearts of people that were otherwise asleep. They were so horrified hearing somebody call out, have their last breath and call out for their mother while they were being killed. That viscerally got to people, viscerally got to white people that have not seen themselves as allies, or just thought, no big deal, like everything's better now that we had, President Obama, or whatever people think. And as a result, I think that is a lesson learned for anybody getting involved. How can we embrace more opportunities to get that heart engagement, the emotional engagement, because that is what's going to sustain a movement. It's not just the policies and the action, but it is, how do you touch the people that are on the sidelines that want to jump in and create a space for them also to get involved and help be a part of this.
And Mr. Mitchell, let me ask you this. How does one, because you're with CARE, you're with an Islamic organization, how does one go out and reach out to their neighbors to say, hey, this is not just a Muslim issue, whatever it is, you gave us a whole list of things that fall under the umbrella of Islamophobia?
Yeah, so I mean, education is key to the work we do. I mean, I often say that education is a very good vaccine against discrimination. So we spend quite a lot of time going to church groups and mosque visitors, even the Tea Party, which was a fun conversation, to explain Islam and our concerns and what issues our community experiences. And then in addition to that, we make sure that working with so-called friendly audiences, other people who are marginalized target communities, so they understand that when they're confronting a police brutality issue, they should be calling the Muslim community to stand with them on that issue, because that is our issue too. If they're addressing abuse of children at the border, that's our issue too. So whether it's people on the left or the right, people that you might be predisposed to be friendly to Muslims or otherwise, there's a lot of education needed all around. And so that is a big part of what we do, is educating people about the diversity of the Muslim community, the concerns of the Muslim community, and the way the Muslim community can help to advance positive change for other people. And the last thing I want to note is that, some of the cosmetic changes that have occurred in recent years, I mean, it's great to see corporations saying Black Lives Matter, I guess, but also, you don't want to let that trick you into a false sense of security. And so, for us, I think as Muslims, African Americans, and I think it's true for other minority groups, that we much more want to see concrete action, concrete policy change. Symbolic change is good. It's good to see that Robert E. Lee's name is getting taken off a high school. I welcome that. But we also want to make sure that school is being properly funded by the government and not being segregated. So that's the last thought I want to share.
All
Yeah,
right.
I want my land back.
Step by step, Bobby. All right. So I want to address some of Mr. Mckesson's video in looking at minimizing police use of excessive force and juxtaposing that. I tried to juxtapose that against police safety. DeRay Mckesson stated, I'll paraphrase it, he said, the police are not really at risk. I think he called it the myth of officer safety. And I was wondering what your all's thoughts are on this. And I'm actually, Justice Nelson, I'm starting with you because of your experience from the bench. And you've handled these kinds of, I don't know if you've handled police situations and safety violence, but you've dealt with the police in dealing with any kind of your criminal cases that have come before you. So what are your thoughts there on myth of officer safety? Oh, you're muted.
No matter how hard I try for that not to happen, it happens. So I do think that there are people that have different perspectives on what the role and the jobs of police officers are versus the roles of citizens. And what I can say is it was always interesting during jury selection to hear the attorneys talk to the various potential jury pool about their ideas. So there wasn't one voice. It was always a continuum. And what I can say was that there were some people who were very clear that of what the job entailed and if there were risks or not, and others who would learn from that conversation. So I did not have to deal with any of the police cases that are occurring now. Those typically happen in the federal system in our state. But what I could say was that I would be witness to, if you will, by virtue of hearing the discussion of the variety of perspectives, and that people were able to move through the conversations with the discourse in a way where they could hear each other, where it wasn't that I am in my position and no one else who's against me is against me, and and it starts the negative discourse. There was an ability to come to a point where then we'll see as we continue to move forward.
Does anybody have anything to build on this? Because Kelly, my boss, wants to ask a question and chime in. So Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Jenrette-Thomas, Mr. Wilson, do any of you guys want to build on that, or should we just go ahead and see what Kelly has to say? No, we're good. The justice said it well. Okay, Kelly.
I actually want to build on that. I realize that the purpose of this forum is to figure out how we can lead by example and do something different to activate a real change. And so when I was listening to Mr. Mckesson, what it sounded like is that we're going to disregard police safety or the issue of it, the existence or non-existence of it, and only deal with police brutality. And I wonder if that is now doing the same thing that maybe the opposition was saying, where there is no police brutality, we only have to take care of our officers. So we need a meeting of a mind somewhere. There is a legitimate threat out there to some police officers. Whether it is as real as police brutality is not really the issue, I think, and I'm wondering from the panelists, is that the only way that we're really going to be able to facilitate change if we both accept that we have a police brutality issue and we have a threat that police officers feel is real and existing?
So what I'm going to do is let the other panelists answer that question since I answered the last two. That way we'll give more time.
Hi. So I work predominantly in media. I'm a television writer by trade. So I write on a lot of different shows, mostly comedies and theater and stuff like that. But a lot of my background before that professionally was in marketing and advertising. And I think that there's a direct, you know, there's a line in my poem that I talk about how I'm tired of the team sports. And I think a lot of people are. But the nature of the world that we live in is that you have red and blue, and it's really easy to market to those things. And so, you know, what you're asking about is like, how do we find a balance between the two things? Because yes, absolutely, cops, they're out there and they have risks that are very real. You know, people do actually want to, you know, target them for various reasons to harm them. But we also have, as we heard in the video, and as we all, I hope, know, police who wield an insane amount of power in this society, and are a lot of the things that we see and end up being brutality, you know, a really terrible use of that power that they're given. And we see very little consequences for the abuse of that power. I guess to come to that kind of middle ground, I think you just need to give more of the police brutality realization to people to kind of accept that. Because I mean, like, if you're going to advertise what it is that you want to get across, and that is like, hello, white America, police are killing people who don't look like you, who actually look like me, and who look like, you know, they're killing people from other communities at alarming rates, and they have no consequences for it. I think it was, what did I hear? That, you know, it takes a cop two nights to get over it, 2 nights sleep to get over it. That's a crazy thing to hear. And that's a crazy thing that I guess we have to accept. Sorry, my daughter just walked in and smiled at me real big.
Okay, we're a family-friendly webinar. And if she would like to chime in, why not? You know,
she'd like to chime in, that'd be great. But, you know, I think we'll get there. I think we'll get there at a certain point, or we'll have like a civil war and everything will be terrible. But, you know, hopefully not, because I do have shows to write and I have a daughter to raise, and I would love for her to experience a lot of the cool stuff that I've gotten to see. And furthermore, I would really like for her to experience maybe at least a taste of a society where she doesn't actually have to worry about disappearing because she's an Indigenous woman, have to worry about whether or not she should call us because cops have stopped her, you know, like, she shouldn't be afraid of those things. No human being should be afraid of those things. But right now, if you're not afraid of those things, then, you know, maybe it's time to wise up.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. Ms. Jenrette-Thomas, Mr. Mitchell, would you like to add to those thoughts? We do have one question from one of our listeners. Attendees. I can ask that question unless you guys have something to build upon what Mr. Wilson had said.
Well, I was just going to say that I do think that not just with respect to this issue of police, but I think in general, we need to be much more gray and nuanced in our discussions and dialogue, because right now we are, as a society, just dumbing things down to the most basic and continuing to just cater to the people that already believe in a particular way. And we're not going to find a middle if we continue down this path where one group has one set of truths and another group has an entirely different set of truths.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, would you like to build on that, or you can answer this, be the first one to answer the next question? Up to you.
No, go to the next one. And I'll note, since you said it's a family-friendly event, I went and turn my camera back on. We have a guest visitor here who's also, inshallah, God willing, going to be working on these issues one day. Wonderful. But no, you can go to the next question.
Look at him. No, we want to adore it. This is your son?
This is my son, yes.
We want to adore your son, so
that's why
we have so much. We have so much to motivate us to make the next generation. The next generation is just motivating me right here. Just with Mr. Wilson talking about his daughter, with you bringing your son on. I'm diverting. Okay, so let's go to this question from John Greachin. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Is there any momentum to anybody have any knowledge about that?
You cut out quite a bit, but let me go in there and say, is there any momentum to develop more and more effective non-lethal weapons?
Well said. Thank you. You got my back, man.
You and me.
Jump in on that briefly. The issue of using non-lethal force, from a layman's perspective, makes sense, right? People will be less likely to be killed by the police if the police are using non-lethal objects. But part of the problem you've seen is that you've got people who are still killed by the police, not by guns, by being over-tased, being injected with ketamine, having a knee put on your neck, chokeholds, being beaten. So non-lethal force, while yes, it's not a bad idea, it's not going to solve the problem. And then the other issue is escalation. For example, if you're using non-lethal items that are nonetheless very harmful on mentally ill people, that's likely to escalate the situation to more violence. On protesters, peaceful protesters, that also is a horrible thing. So, non-lethal weapons are not going to solve the issue. They've got plenty of non-lethal weapons. They've got tear gas and stun grenades and rubber bullets and all that stuff. But that is not going to solve the problem, is what I want to emphasize.
Okay, so I'm looking at the clock. We have about 12 minutes left, and we have a little bit more to do before we let everybody go. We have had an incredible and immense conversation with our trailblazing panelists. We'll now share, well, wait a minute, I just got a question in. We'll go with it if we can keep a tight answer, because we do have a little bit of wiggle room. This is from Demetrius Perez. Is there any consideration for how to change systemic racism in the military? I'm an Air Force veteran, and I saw too many of my fellow airmen experience some form of discrimination. In my experience, the military is inherently racist and sows that racism through the disparate treatment of its members. How can we solve this issue? Who would like to tap into that?
I'll talk about it. So there is some activity being started in the military with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I would probably start through those channels, since the military is very hierarchical in its approach to channels. But bring the lens of looking at policies, practices, and norms. That's how you start to get at systemic racism or any other systemic issues. When you see the disparate outcomes, when you see that certain groups are treated more negatively than others, and being able to show the data related to that or the facts related to that, that is a strategy that I've had to use in our firm to be able to create change. And when people see the numbers, that becomes very difficult to dispute versus when it's anecdotal.
Okay. Would anybody like to build on that, or we're good to go for the next step as we wrap things up? Wrap things up. Okay. So we're going to share with you the remaining 4 minutes of the video clips in how others are activating diversity. And then before our concluding remarks, we'll come back and ask our panelists how they will activate diversity and continue to lead by example. So we'll go ahead and cut to the video.
I will activate diversity by having the difficult, messy, but necessary conversations to advance the work of DEI, as well as raising awareness of the missing but necessary conversations required to advance the work of DEI.
I will activate diversity by sharing my story and listening to the story of others. I will continue to champion diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies in the workplace, and I will have the courage to have the difficult conversations.
I will lead and activate diversity by dismantling the revolving doors of arrest, probation, and parole by actively practicing and teaching intentional justice.
I will activate diversity by being sure that those individuals who are directly impacted, that their voices are heard and not just other individuals. And I will continue to push my fellow white folks to get in places where they are not as comfortable, to begin to understand the plight of people in our criminal justice system.
I will lead and activate diversity by my work as an educator, an author, and community member.
I will lead and activate diversity by going into communities that I haven't gone into yet as a volunteer attorney, help members of those communities with their legal matters, and through that, listen, learn, and understand their stories, and then take those stories and share them with people in my circle.
I will lead and activate diversity by advocating to ensure that not only are Indigenous people visible, but that they have the full authority to self-determine their own public safety and healing within their own communities.
I will lead and activate diversity by championing our diverse communities and promoting inclusion. Inclusion means both a sense of belonging as well as a recognition of individual uniqueness. Increasing diversity in the legal profession results in better service to our clients, facilitates access to justice, and improves the profession as a whole.
Activate diversity by serving as a conduit to open dialogue on diverse discussions. I will reach back for others and walk hand in hand with my brothers and sisters of all backgrounds. I will continue to speak up for those who are underrepresented, and I will continue to lead by example.
I will lead and activate diversity by making sure everybody has equal rights and giving my opinion and also taking everyone's opinion.
As a Black woman, I am activating diversity by serving as a public policy professional and counsel, challenging the criminal legal system, which disproportionately impacts Black and brown people, people who look like me.
I will lead and activate diversity by standing up against systems of oppression, tearing down the prison industrial complex by bringing more people home in 2021.
I will activate diversity by paying attention to the voices that provide me with information and insight to make sure that even in my solo practice, I stay open to new ideas and new points of view to incorporate perspectives I have not lived or even imagined.
And I activate diversity by utilizing web-based sentencing software to compare and contrast prospective sentences in pending cases with prior sentences in closed cases to make sure that the criminally accused are equitably treated in the sentencing process.
I am proud to lead and activate diversity through my service as a legislator.
So you have ideas and thoughts from students, professors, legislators, and attorneys, and everything in between. So that was really inspiring. That was a great job to Steve Wildy for pulling that together for us. I know he put a lot of hours behind it. And Bobby Wilson, he's not a television person, but he did a pretty good job learning on his own, huh? There we go.
I do all right.
All right. So with that, I'd like to give a final question to our panelists. How will you activate diversity and lead by example? Let's go ahead and start with Mr. Wilson.
I will activate diversity and lead by example by continuing to push for positive representation in Hollywood. And I don't just mean on screen, I mean behind the cameras, I mean in the writers' rooms, I mean, right down to hair and makeup.
All right, wonderful. And Ms. Jenrette-Thomas?
I will activate diversity and lead by example by de-biasing our systems.
All right, Mr. Mitchell.
I will, God willing, lead by example and activate diversity by making sure the Muslim community continues to harness our own diversity to combat anti-Muslim bigotry while simultaneously combating every other form of interconnected bigotry, from xenophobia to anti-Semitism to anti-Black racism.
And finally, Justice Nelson.
I will activate diversity by example by bringing my whole self to all of the conversations that I have, both in my role as a justice and as a citizen. I stand in my authenticity and celebrate and honor the lived experiences of others, and make sure that we make room for all of those voices to be heard so that we can make sure that our country lives up to its promises.
All right. On that note, to each of our panelists, I thank you so much for being a part of this program, for sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your ideas, and for motivating us to activate diversity and lead by example. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to serve as your moderator. One of our team members, Steve Wildy, he went ahead and put up in the chat where you can access tonight's program with the recording. So feel free to take a look at that. And Steve Wildy and Sherry Nepal, they're everything behind the scenes. Thank you so much for what you guys have done, as well as I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the other people. I am so sorry. Forgive me for forgetting your names. I think there's Kimberly Cochin. Am I saying your name right? And you know what, Kelly, you can fill in with everybody else who I just, either botched up their names or didn't. So Kelly, you're a chairwoman. I'm going to hand things back to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Well, thank you, Janaan. Outstanding job. Thank you, panelists. We really appreciate your time. And I'm not only going to take about a minute. I want to acknowledge the chairwoman, and that is Madam Chair Alfreda Coward. She said a lot about me, but she has been phenomenal this entire year. She has pushed us. She has supported us. She has not given up at all. She's been to our meetings. She's been very engaged. And so I would like to say thank you, Madam Chair Alfreda Coward. You are phenomenal. And we all are looking to try to walk a little bit in your shoes. Maybe not fill them, but just walk a little bit in them. That's a big role, and you've done an amazing job. I also want to thank all of you for joining us. I know that some of you, this is your first time. A lot of you, this is your second, third, and fourth time. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We could not have done it without your participation, and we truly, truly appreciate it. There are 1,000 things I want to say, and none of it I am remembering. But there is one thing that I do want you to know for sure. The purpose of this entire series was not just to educate you, but it was to activate you. Please, every single one of you, look deep inside. What can you do to activate diversity individually in your community, in your law firms, in your schools, in your everyday life? Because if we become more diverse, we can become, oh, I didn't have a good ending for that. I was just going off the top. But if we do become more diverse, we will be greater. This country will be greater. We can move mountains. I'm positive of it. I want to end with something that our guest panelist, Jenrette-Thomas, has given us. It is an alliance that we can join. Law Firm Anti-Racism Alliance, a way for us to get involved. If you didn't know how you can get involved, that's one place to start. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic night. Be safe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.